starts to resurface and your belief becomes more prevalent. That's what Carson Wentz needs. And I believe that's who Frank Reich has been and was for him. And that's why he wants to go back to that situation, because he knows a guy like Frank Reich, he believes in what my abilities are. And even when I'm struggling, he still believes in what my abilities are. And I think when you have a guy who's struggled the way that Carson Wentz has struggled, that's what he's going for. And yes, the situation is great. It's laid up. We saw who was the quarterback this year with the Colts. I'm drawing a blank. Phillip Rivers, yes. Phillip Rivers. My fault. We saw Phillip Rivers over there this year, and he had a success to a degree. But can he take them to the next level is the question. And I don't believe Carson Wentz can do that. You already have Jacoby Brissett on a roster that he is a very viable option at stepping in and knowing the offense, knowing the guys around him, and really getting them some productive wins and taking them into the playoffs. I don't think Carson Wentz personally should go there just because it's going to feel good for his ego and his psyche. He needs to go to a situation that is surrounding him, that he's going to have to compete, that he's going to have to find that dog that we talked about earlier, Chris, and get that fire back, because I think he's lost a lot of that.
Listen, should Carson Wentz do everything in his power? I mean, let's be real here. His power is in his bank account, GJ. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real here. If he goes to the Colts, it's a great opportunity. It's a great situation. As former head coach, we know he had his best season under Reich. But here's the thing. If he goes there and he plays poorly with a team that has a running attack, that has a few nice receivers out there, that has a really, really good defense, and he doesn't play well again, right? What does that look like? I don't know. But is there going to be more pressure because of all of the elements that the Colts have? Sure, there's going to be that pressure because of the connection to the coach and the talent on the team, and an old fogey like Phillip Rivers was able to come in there and have a great year this past season. But make no mistake about it, that man is $58 million against that in dead cap money, or dead money to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think it's something like 20-some plus million, 22, 25. It's some crazy number in terms of what his cap number is for the Philadelphia Eagles. If I'm Carson Wentz, I should be doing everything to just sit back, chill, do what I need to do with my body, make sure mentally I'm where I want to be, because right now you're playing with house money because you have a team that doesn't necessarily want you and is trying to, address trading you and figure out who's going to take this big nut of a contract that you have. Your contract is really all you need to be concerned about right now. Worry about football when you figure out the team that you're going to go to.
Well, he definitely got his money, as you said, LeVar, but I disagree with you guys. I think Indy is the place he needs to go. I think, first of all, he needs a completely fresh start, a totally fresh start where he can get away from Philadelphia and all the residue that was on him from his time there. He really only had the one great run there, and then from that point on, it was downhill. Going to a Frank Reich, a friendly face, I believe they share like a Christian faith. They got a good relationship. That might be the guy that can get in Wentz's mind and get him on the right path again. LeVar, you mentioned all the benefits there, the good defense, the running game, Jonathan Taylor. They got some receivers. They could be a good team. He's in a whole different conference. And you are correct. I'm not guaranteeing it. Maybe Carson Wentz never gets back to being a good quarterback. Maybe he's done. But I think Indianapolis is the best chance he has of reclaiming what he used to be. If I'm Carson Wentz, I want nothing to do with Chicago. Not unless Nick Foles, who's in Chicago right now, is a part of the trade. So if Chicago gives up, some draft picks and Nick Foles and sends him back to Philly, which does make sense. Because, Foles is a hero in Philadelphia. He's got a statue. He could back up Jalen Hurts. And if Hurts, doesn't perform well, you throw Nick Foles in. He's great as a backup, not as a starter, but he's great as a backup. That could work for Philly. But if Foles stays in Chicago, I see no reason for them to bring Carson Wentz there. Because I think what bothered him in Philadelphia, part of it, was having to look over his shoulder. Having the players clearly prefer Nick Foles, or at least many of them prefer Nick Foles to him. Having to worry about the guy that won a Super Bowl when you couldn't, taking your job. And I think that would all be in his mind again if he went to Chicago. So, Greg, I don't think he should go to the Bears at all. Now, if Foles is gone, I'm fine with the Bears because defense, all that other stuff. But not with Foles there, no way.
LeVar, I'm going to ask you this because you've been on that field and you've played. Like, does it feel like Carson Wentz is running away from a situation? Like, because as a player, like you don't win a Super Bowl, or you win a Super Bowl, but you're not the reason why. So naturally, when whether it's injury or you just aren't there, you're a guy that's backing up. You want to prove to an organization and to the team within that locker room that you are that guy. And I just feel like Carson Wentz hasn't been able to do that, and he's running away from a chance and an opportunity to compete. Like, that's what we do. Chris, you talked about him looking over his shoulder. Shoot, LeVar, when you were in the locker room, did they draft another linebacker? Wherever you were, whether it was every year. So this is something we have to do. What is your take on Carson Wentz not stepping up to the plate and competing like every other player has to do in this National Football League?
Well, I think Carson Wentz, outside of the poor play that he has had, I mean, he can lean on the fact that this is a team that really has been in disarray due to injury, due to quarterback controversy, due to a lot of different things. So, Greg, when I look at Carson Wentz, where he's at right now, Carson Wentz isn't taking, in my opinion, he's not taking too much self-accountability for how poor his play has been. And he can lean on the fact that there's information that can back his poor play that is outside of his control. So when I look at Carson Wentz right now, I look at him as playing what would be considered a passive-aggressive approach to what's taking place. Why? Because he's already been rewarded with the extension, which, by the way, if you paid attention to the contract, it doesn't kick in until this season, right? So they haven't had to pay him that money. It kicks in 2021 season. So I'm looking at myself like I got rewarded for being an elite quarterback. I'm getting the short end of the stick of an organization that ends up firing their head coach, that had a poor season, that has Hall of Fame caliber linemen who aren't playing. There has been so many different changes during the course of my time here that it's not that I'm running, and I'm not going to allow for people to think that I'm running from the situation. You guys just aren't willing to do what it is you guys need to do for me to have success. I.e., if we take the example of Russell Wilson earlier in the show, does Carson Wentz come out and say, y'all need to build a better team around my talent so people can see how good I am again? Or do y'all trade me? And obviously, Jalen Hurts, the situation with everything with Carson Wentz, it's an easier discussion to try to say to trade him, to sell, but I don't think that it's going to be an easy result. So I don't, power and trying to get to Chicago or to Indy versus going to Chicago, I don't look at them as running. I look at it as it's a more difficult proposition for the other teams.
Well, for me personally, when I look at Carson Wentz, I love him as an individual. As a player at that position, quarterback position, it's more than just making plays yourself. It's can you elevate the guys around you? And so when you talk about Russell Wilson, I feel like that's what he does because of his playmaking ability. When quarterbacks start to do too much, it's either for one or two reasons. It's because they have to, because they're trying to make everyone around them better, or they're doing too much because they're trying to do something that is more than what they're being.
in, right? What does that look like? I don't know. But is there going to be more pressure because of all of the elements that the Colts have? Sure, there's going to be that pressure because of the connection to the coach and the talent on the team, and an old fogey like Phillip Rivers was able to come in there and have a great year this past season. But make no mistake about it, that man is $58 million against that in dead cap money